Standing up in McKinney. This is According to Callus. Coming to you on the 14th day of August, the year of our Lord 2024. It is episode 680. So, I've been thinking to myself off and on. I had a marathon day yesterday. Today was not short by any stretch of the imagination. And judging by the time this is likely to get out, you'll figure that out. I got to say, when thinking about what could I talk about today, what would be interesting, what would be topical, I just decided I was going to call an audible. I'm going to talk about a couple of TV shows that I used to watch. I mean, they're both off the air, right? And how they relate to some of the things going on in our lives today. So the first one, Suits, and the secondary one is Boston Legal. And I think I've got what hopefully are some interesting or unique observations and takes on this and applications to our day-to-day life right here in Collin County. Before we get into that, let me remind you, I need your help. Like, share the show, follow it, join me on the social media of your choice. A reminder, I have a group and a page on Facebook. I'm a pro at Gab. I drop in at MeWe, and you can still find the show at YouTube. That being said, nothing matters if I can't get the shares out there, if I can't, kind of rebuild the audience. The algorithm is not your friend, and it lets you know that. I suspect a lot of it has to do that we're past the primaries on the run-up to the general election of 2024. I'm not really sure why they're worried about little old me, but here we are. That being said, in my Audible, I anticipate we're going to have a little fun. Okay, here we go on with the show. Okay, so some observations, right? So I watched the show Suits with my wife. We kind of did the Netflix thing where you watch it basically all the way through. I want to say there were 8 or 9 episodes. We probably did it over a couple of months. Just sitting at home at night and watch 1 or 2 episodes every night that it was available. I will say that I enjoyed the show. Of course, because it's a lawyer show and they like to have some interesting things. There are some episodes that I didn't particularly care for, specific issues or scenes. But again, we're dealing with a quasi-reality of what goes on in New York. So clearly that's not going to relate to anybody in Texas. Just saying. It's a whole nother world out there, right? So, observation number 1. Ambition drives everybody there. Some of them are more blind to their ambition than others, and some of them, while ambitious, at least take the time back to look at the bigger picture. Now, in the context of the show, in my observation, we're shown early on that Jessica, right, the senior partner of the law firm, is the one that's, nominally in control, right? She's the one that calls the shots. She has the final say, but she does grasp the big picture. The alpha of the team, if you will, the guy that's what do they call it? Rainmaker. He knows that it's her show. It's kind of, I know my role and I get to do all these things and I am the big dog, but she's the boss. Just, a little dichotomy there, but fair play, right? He doesn't have a job, Harvey, if it's not for Jessica. But Harvey's kind of eclipsed what the position that he was brought on for. I mean, I imagine, and I think it gets proved out in the program, that this was always the long-term play. But without a doubt, he's the leader of this little band of attorneys. And they all do their own thing. But one of the things that I always noticed is the constant internal fighting. Lewis by all means, is probably the smartest person in the room in certain issues, right? You got the guy Mike, which is like the resident genius, but really what his deal is, he's got a photographic memory and he's able to put everything together. So it's not so much that he's smarter or has a better understanding, it's just that he has this knack to remember things, if he should choose to take the time to learn it. Whereas Lewis fixates, centers in, overanalyzes, delves in, makes the most of little minor things, and quite frankly is the master of the rules. Now what's interesting is this mastery comes back to bite him a time or two. But in his ploys, in his schemes, in his shenanigans, his infighting, he's always utilizing the rules to try and one up. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, it's I've created this so I can pull it off. Now, granted, that becomes a convenient and interesting plot point from time to time, but it's the scheming, the stuff in the background. And each time that he's about to succeed, he screws up. Blinded by his own ambition and fixated on his own minor details. He gets lost in the sea of what's going on. I mean, that's my observation. You can agree or disagree. It's my show, my call. But I'm not saying that you have to agree. I'm just asking you to consider for a minute, look at it this way. Do you think this is plausible understanding? Do you think that it makes sense? And if you do you see what the danger of this is, right? You've got a couple, well, in this instance, a single individual hyperfixated on something that is largely meaningless in the grand scheme of things, but has the ability to upend the progress of everything that's going on. And we see this play out in multiple mergers and separations and takeovers and whatever else of this firm, which is really interesting to me why anybody would want to do business with this firm that I think changed their name 4 or 5 times. I'm not sure. I think they planned on doing a spin-off or a sequel with the new characters that were essentially introduced at the second to last season. Or, yeah, I guess that's right. And that could have been interesting. But what I want to really point out on this is the Lewis comes to figure out where his place is, right? What's the thing that he is best at, and maybe, just maybe, I need to figure out what I'm going to do to make this work. Because clearly, I'm not up to the task of doing the big things, but I am very, very good on these things. Now, the whole idea of knowing your role, right? Knowing your place, understanding how you fit into an organization comes to play here. He and Harvey are so hyper-fixated on being a named partner. This is their major, massive achievement. Their whole worlds are surrounding this, and it clouds their judgment. So I wonder, in the context, is an understated message of the show that ambition is fine, just don't let it cloud your judgment. Don't let it, destroy what you're actually working for, this ambition. I mean, I don't give that much credit to the writers, but it was my takeaway, my interesting thing, right? So the secondary thing, if you accept being the Bravo, right? The wingman, the second, is that really a demotion? Are you really less than? I mean, every leader needs a follower, needs a second, whatever you want to call it. A leader is no good if there's nobody to follow them. A leader can't get anything done if he doesn't have people follow. So I think the importance of the Bravo or of the second or the lieutenant or whatever your phraseology is it sets up the hierarchy and how things should go, but it also defers, right? Sometimes you've got something that, your Bravo or your second or your lieutenant is especially good at. Not your cup of tea. I mean, you're the leader, but, that guy's the specialist. He knows what's best. He's my second. Follow him. Do what he says. If I'm not there, let him handle it. Right? At times, this is Mike for both attorneys, right? Both Lewis and Harvey use him, right? He's not seasoned enough. He's not ready for primetime all by himself, but they both depend on him at different times. They both understand that he has an expertise and he is a good lieutenant. Again, just an observation from a show. All right, now that I've kind of spent about 10 minutes talking about this, and I know there's a whole lot of other things going on here, and I'm not reading too deeply in this. I'm just trying to make some general observations and how might they apply to everyday life. So the second one is Boston Legal. So now I got to say, you put Captain Kirk in a show, William Shatner. I'm going to at least check it out, right? I mean, even T.J. Hooker back in the day, having one of the Heathers in it probably didn't hurt. We're all kids at one point. We like pretty girls, but it was T.J. Hooker. It was William Shatner's show, and now we've got Boston Legal. So in this setup, he is the master of the courtroom, but he's also past his prime. In many ways, he foreshadowed Biden. but he's still got it. And when he's got it, he's all over it. But then, unfortunately, he's got these misses. He's got what he refers to mad cow, right? Perhaps more accurately described as dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that. But it never really spends a lot of time talking about it. Just he keeps calling it mad cow. But again, when he's on, he's on. And everybody defers to him when he's on. But when he's not, they take action, they understand, and he's usually got the people in place to do what needs to happen even when he's not game on. Right? So, for the life of me, I can't remember Spader's character, but James Spader's character, whatever. But he's the right hand, is the partner, if you will, of Denny Crane. So all these different things that are going on, yes, he goes off on himself. Yes, he does everything. And he pushes and he prods and he makes his leader better. They've got all these different dynamics going on in their office. But by and large, the Crane, and Crane, Poole, and Schmidt, is Denny Crane. There is no process. There's no business. There's no top dog without Denny Crane. But they all know he's past his prime. He's got his limitations. We have to build the firm up around him. We have to fill the holes that he has created. So this is an organization that's dealing with what was once a great thing, and they're understanding that they want to keep it, preserve it, but we have to do all these other things, right? And that's kind of some of the progress that goes on in the background of the show. Of course, this is my observation. You can feel free to, dismiss it if you want. And it's also a story about passing the torch, right? Denny Crane's past his prime. He knows it, and he's got his guy he's going to hand it off to. Again, I apologize. Mind went blank. I should be. You know what? I'm just going to look it up because I feel bad. I don't want to give Mr. Spader due credit here. Oh, I'm not sure how I could forget Alan Shore. But what's interesting to me, so you're talking about Alan Shore, and he's kind of the character to follow and take over for when Denny goes off the pasture because it's inevitable, right? And Denny recognizes that, and he's trying to get him ready, prepare him to take over, make sure that, his baby, his law firm is going to be in good hands. But Alan also doesn't necessarily agree with Denny, and he's not always on the same terms, and he's his own person, so they're pushing back, they're fighting. And it always comes down to he decides that he legitimately, in a manly way, loves Denny Crane, and he wants what's best for Denny Crane, and he wants what's best for the firm, and he's willing to set aside his own personal ambition. He's making a sacrifice, and if you will, I guess in part to reverence, but it's a two-way street here. In fact, the last season, which I really didn't watch, they kind of went off the rails, but it gets into this situation where Denny's like, I love you. You're my closest friend. You're the best thing I have in my life. And it goes off the rails after this. But basically, this is such an important relationship to me. How do I solidify this? How do I make it permanent? And I can't help but relate that, there's a lot that could be read into that. And clearly that was not the intent of the show. I mean, I know they did some, jabs at it, and they were certainly, they're having fun with it and the concept for sure. But I don't think in any way, shape, or form that they ever create a relationship outside of friendship, deep, deep friendship. And what's interesting to me is it was a point of problem with comfort, really. I mean, I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with two legitimate heterosexual guys that have a really tight bond relationship, and they enjoy spending time with each other, and they relax in each other's company, and they're friends, and that's it. There's nothing going on there beyond that. They have wives, girlfriends, whatever. They have their own separate relationship there. This is something unique. It makes me think about the idea. You've got David and Jonathan in the Old Testament. And Jonathan knows full well that his father screwed up, but his father's still the king. And David's his best friend. They both have their lives, their wives, and whatever else, but they're best friends. They kind of grew up together in the same orbit after, David got brought in after he killed Goliath. They're extremely tight. There's a deep, deep relationship there. And people want to go back and read into it and make it sexual. No. This is commonplace once upon a time for men to be close friends with other men. So I think the issue here is it gets you to rethink what can be done. So in the context of this show, it's at least somewhat tongue-in-cheek, and it's certainly a generational remove. So they remove some of that fake tension. But the other thing noticed is respect is given because respect has been earned. And there's an appropriate balancing act. Behind closed doors, the two go at it. They have their arguments. But once they walk out and they go to face the world, they're on the same team. And everybody knows that if you come after Alan, you're going to mess with Denny. And if you come after Denny, you're going to have to deal with Alan. I would like to think that that's a common thing, that's nothing super unique there, but I'm not really sure. It's a situation that we live in right now. When you're dealing with an idea that we can't even tell what's real. We don't know what's legitimate. The very concept of news has been challenged. The dissemination of information can't be trusted. Governments certainly can't be trusted, though I would suggest perhaps they've earned that. But in the age where everything on a screen, everything over the airwaves cannot be trusted. Some would say it's by design. I'd say certainly part of it is. If you can't trust anything, where does that leave you? Well, at least in the context of the show, they had friends that they could trust. Now, what's interesting is a follow-on, right? So I've pretty much covered both the shows and some of the things that I picked up out of that. And if you are aware of what's going on in real life around me, you'll see why those things matter, right? What they're related to. I would like to suggest that the notion that if you're not in charge, that you're not important, needs to stop. The notion that if you don't have some title that you're irrelevant, should go away. Now, I'm not one to, dwell on things. I try and deal with people one-on-one out of respect and out of courtesy all the time. And when I deal with somebody that is perhaps in my life the equivalent of a Denny Crane, right? Great. There's love, there's admiration, there's respect. When you're dealing with a Harvey that's Mr. Cool and whatever else, you got to give him room. You got to let him do his thing, but sometimes he needs to be brought back in. Certainly when you're dealing with a guy like Louis Litt, he can't be left on his own. One of the takeaways is no matter how good Louis was, he wasn't the guy that should be running the show. And no matter how good we thought Harvey was, he wasn't quite ready. Now all that changes, 8-9 seasons in, but it's clear. So what I'd suggest to you, that my takeaway is and my observations is, I know plenty of people that I work with and I spend time around with in this political world who are, in my opinion, my Denny Crane. But I also know plenty of other guys that are my Mike, potentially my Harvey, and definitely my Louis Litt. And what do I mean by that? They reflect those characters. And in my sphere, I have to adapt and deal with them. I do know some people that are subject matter experts and hyper-focused on what they do. Unfortunately, they can't see anything beyond that. I know people that are like literal geniuses but can't control themselves. They need to be tempered, directed, and matured. I know people that are natural-born leaders that are Johnny on the spot and could sell ice to an Eskimo, but they're not ready yet. I'd like to think that I know a Jessica or two out there who have been there, done that, have mastered the craft, that can see the big picture and don't have to prove themselves. They're already there. Likewise, I don't have somebody that is my Denny Crane, but I could see a number of people that could be. I would love nothing more than to have somebody that I know always has my back and I have theirs. Somebody that we go out and we face the world together. We don't have to agree on everything. We push, we cajole, we force them to be better, each other, right? So the question is, what do you see in your life? I mean, I've kind of gave you a brief sketch of these characters, and I'm not trying to be hyper specific. It's a generalization. It's a generalization of a generalization. When you look for somebody to take charge, when you look for somebody to lead, what do you expect to see? Are you comfortable with them? Is it a lack of maturity? Is it a lack of the ability to see beyond the trees? Is it a maturity thing? Is it past their prime and they're still awesome at what they do, but they really need to be watched and helped? I don't know. When I deal with my political life, right, my in real life political terms, I run across situations like this. So I always try to be deferential. I always try to be kind. I always try to be level-headed and fair to everybody I deal with. So when you're thinking about this, when you're looking at this, what character do you most identify with? What does your team around you look like? I mean, there's plenty of other characters. I took the three from Suits that were, kind of most commonly known, and I took the other two from Boston Legal that, again, most commonly known. Maybe you've never watched the show. I would encourage you, hey, take a couple of nights or a couple of weekends and watch some of the episodes. They're quite good. Some of them not so good, but most of them are quite good. But it's a learning exercise. It's to sharpen your observation skills, right? So just a thought. I mean, I really, honestly, I wanted to be lighthearted. I wanted to do something kind of not so challenging. I mean, the other option, the thing that I considered is, I was reading through, I believe it was First Chronicles 25, somewhere in there, and was talking about how the Israelites were commanded to go kill all the Amalekites. and I thought it was striking because, at this section, it's quite clear you're supposed to kill them all. Everything. Leave nothing behind. And I guess this is somewhat related because we talked about, David and Jonathan. Well, this is where Saul, Jonathan's father, screwed up. He didn't kill the king, and then he allowed his troops, the people that are supposed to be following him, the people that are supposed to be trusting him, since they've been asking for a king, he allowed them to change the terms. He allowed them to get what they wanted rather than do the right thing. He didn't keep in mind who he was answering to. So the story is less about go kill all the Amalekites. It's more about, I told you to do something. You need to be able to tell me that you did it and you did it correctly. And unfortunately for Saul, Samuel shows up and kind of busts him. Not a good situation. Certainly not ideal. Not for Saul, at least. And Samuel's very disappointed. I mean, I guess he didn't see it coming. Just an interesting, I mean, I guess it goes back to the old idea that, the prophet is not respected. The prophet's not listened to. So, again, just some observations. Try to stay a little lighthearted. But honestly, we have a lot of stuff going on. We need to really buckle down and consider what we're doing going forward. Pick our team, stand by our guys, do the right thing. Worry about the minor details later, perhaps, right? Lewis, calm down. With that, I'm just going to cut it short. It's already late. I want to get a show out. There's so much more I could say, but I'm going to spare you. I'm going to give you a short episode on this Wednesday. I'm going to try and get you one that's good, solid, and back kind of on the stream on Friday. But there's just so many things going on. Maybe it was good to take a little retrospective break talking about characters. And with that, this has been According to Callus. And I will see you on the other side.
For all your Texas fashion tees, it's TexianPride.com. Whether you're out honky-tonkin' in Austin, bucking Broncos in Fort Worth, or strolling the San Antonio Riverwalk, Texian Pride is here for you. Support a Texan-owned business and show off your love for Texas with style. Visit TexianPride.com for your next fashionable Texas tee.